Senate Bill 390.
390. Give Senator Surovell your attention. It's Senate Bill 390, dealing with temporary visitor's license, driver's license. And I think you have a entourage of supporters here.
Yes, sir. There should be a substitute as well.
All right. If you can hand the substitutes, or a motion on the substitute? It's been moved and seconded. We adopt the substitute. We have the substitute before us. Fire away. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, now we know we're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this piece of this legislation before you presents an opportunity to us to improve law enforcement in the state, improve public safety, and increase tax revenue in the Commonwealth of Virginia without raising taxes. It's a very unique opportunity in front of us today. Just so you understand how I came at this, I represented the 44th District in the House of Delegates for the last 6 years in Northern Virginia. That's basically the Route 1 corridor in Fairfax County. A district now I represent has grown to include all Route 1 from the Woodrow Wilson Bridge all the way down to the Stafford County, The district I represent is about 29% foreign born, it's about 23% Hispanic. It's also probably got about another 15% of folks from other countries as well. I had a town hall about 1.5 years ago, a Hispanic town hall in my district, where I asked the community to come out and talk to me about issues that were important to them. I spoke for about 45 minutes about what I thought was important, and went over things that I thought they would care about, and I asked them what they thought about. The very first question I got was, we need to talk about driver's licenses. We really need to get government ID. We're tired of having, or we or others having to go over to Maryland and pretend like we live in Maryland or whatever to get a license in Maryland. We really need Virginia ID. It's time we got the ID in Virginia. So the bill in front of you, what it does is it says that if somebody can show they've lived in Virginia for 12 months, number one. Number two, they can show that they've paid income taxes, filed a Virginia income tax return, or been claimed as a dependent on a Virginia tax return. And they can be issued a Virginia temporary license. That license will have stamped in it in conspicuous letters, not for federal use, to make it clear that it's not compliant with the Federal Real ID Act, which we are not compliant with anyway, but just to make it clear, we're not compliant with that. It says not for federal use. And it also has deferred implementation date to give DMV time to create the credential, create the process, and to hire people in order to implement this. It also has a $53 fee associated with it. Where that number comes from, you might notice it's higher than it is for a normal driver's license. That fee comes from the Department of Motor Vehicles, who's indicated that's what they anticipate it would cost to recover the expense associated with processing the tsunami of applications they're likely to receive should this become the law. And the DMV basically looked at the experience in other states, looked at how many people come in other states relative to our population, and that's the fee they come up with that they thought that would make this revenue neutral, at least in terms of the DMV budget. And so that's where the fee comes from. In terms of questions, that is for the fact that it's estimated there's about 400,000 people in the Commonwealth of Virginia that this bill would make eligible for driver's licenses. In the state of Utah, when they passed this, 75%, when they did an audit, they estimated that 75% of the people who were eligible ended up obtaining an ID afterwards. So that just gives you an idea of what we're talking about. Now, in terms of the benefits of this, I'm going to go over 6 different reasons, 6 different benefits of this. Number one is taxes. Obviously, on the DMV side of things, as I said, we've tried to structure a fee that's revenue neutral to DMV. But in order to get one of these ID cards, you have to file your taxes in Virginia. So you're talking about another 300,000 to 400,000 people filing Virginia income taxes. Now, what I did was just on the back of the envelope is I went on the state website, which calculates the income taxes. The state of Virginia has an income tax calculator on it for the public to use. And I put in $35,000. So if every person, every one of those 300,000 people, 400,000 people, claims $35,000 of income taxes, some will be higher, some will be lower, but $35,000, that would generate an extra $702 million a year in revenue in income taxes alone to this state. $702 million. If each person makes $25,000, it still generates $472 million in additional income tax revenue. And of course, once people do the things they have to do to get a license, once they go get insurance, once they start buying cars, once they start doing other things, they start paying other taxes. Every vehicle that's bought has a sales tax on the vehicle. On car insurance premiums, we have a tax on car insurance premiums, which would increase revenue there. But the revenue upside of the Commonwealth is massive on this, and that's been the experience in other states that have done this. That's number one. Number two is safety. In order to get a license, you have to study the Virginia rules of the road. You have to study, you have to get a learner's permit, you have to learn what our rules are here, you have to pass a test in order to get a license. So we'll have people that are trained in the rules of the road here, that know what our rules are, know what the signs mean, know where the lines are, all the things that I think most of us take for granted. But I think we will have safer drivers. That's important because in other states, they've conducted research in New Mexico and Utah, and they found that after implementation of similar laws in those very conservative states, I would note, New Mexico experienced a 24% decrease in alcohol-related incidents between 2002 and 2009. Utah saw a 16% decline between 1999 and 2010, and they attribute that in part to issuing these credentials in those states. Number three, there's fewer hit-and-run cases.
Let me just interrupt you real quick.
Yes, sir.
And I know that the rest of the committee are going to have some questions, and I know you want to go through all these statistics. However, we're gonna really need to focus on the policy issue as to whether we want to deviate from what we currently require residents of this state opposed to someone who's here on a temporary visa. I think that's where you need to be focusing your comments on, and not give us all the statistics of how much money it's going to create and all these other things, because we really need to hone in on, are we going to create a different class of individuals? So that's the point I believe you need to make.
Well, I don't think there's any question we're going to create, this is going to be a temporary license, and it has to be renewed on an annual basis. It's going to be a different kind of license than what's currently issued. It's going to have the not for federal use stated on the face of the thing, so that law enforcement and everybody else will see that on there, and they'll know it's not a traditional, typical Virginia license.
But you would agree that we have what's known as legal presence and requirements in order to comply with federal and state law that we have here by presenting birth certificates and other things in order to get your driver's license if you're a legal resident of this state.
I'm not aware of whether federal law requires us to do that in order to issue a driver's license credential.
Well, I shouldn't say federal law, but some things that we have to do in order to get on an airplane or whatever, and we present a Virginia driver's license, there's the understanding that we've had the process of showing that these are legal residents in the state.
That's why this ID would have something stamped on the face of it that it's not for federal use, so it would be clear to everybody that this is not a traditional Virginia license which has those indicators. And I would also point out that the D&D is going to need to create a new class of paperwork that's required in order to substantiate your ID in order to obtain one of these, as compared with what they're already using. Because right now, the type of documentation that they require to be shown would require you to show legal presence. And D&D, Mr. Holcomb is here, and he's prepared to testify today about the bill, which the administration does support, which has been implemented in other states, and he is familiar with what other states have gone through and what other kinds of documentation they require, I think. Mr. nodding his head, so.
Senator Garrett.
I'm curious, as I read your bill, I don't see anything that addresses section 24.2 of the code.
What is that?
It's elections, and currently, as drafted, this would be a valid photo ID for voter registration and voting in Virginia. Is that an intended benefit to be conveyed? Because right now it says state or federal issued photo ID with photo from Virginia or Virginia local subdivision. And I didn't see anything addressing 24.2 in the bill.
It's not my intent to allow anybody to vote who is otherwise not eligible to vote in Virginia, as these people would not be, and if the gentleman would like to place an amendment on the bill to make it clear, I'd be happy to accept that as a friendly amendment.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's the kind of thing you'd think you'd contemplate when you came with a bill like this.
Senator Gary, have any further comments you'd like to make? Or a question? Okay. All right. Senator Distet.
I have one quick question, maybe two. An international driver's license will accomplish the same goal that you're trying to seek here, which is just providing the ability to drive, correct?
The DMV could probably deal with that. I'm not quite as familiar with international driver's licenses. I know, I can't tell if Mr. Holt, they might be able to speak to international driver's licenses and how those would work.
I'm just trying to understand the purpose and the intent behind the bill, and I think I do. And if the purpose and the intent is to allow folks to drive and obtain insurance and be able to purchase cars and things of that nature, you can do that with an international driver's license, I believe. So I just want to make sure that I'm not mistaken on this. And it sounds like the intent of the bill can be accomplished with the same thing with an international driver's license.
DMV, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Karen Graham with the Department of Motor Vehicles. An international driver's license is essentially just a translation of a foreign country license. It does not provide any privilege at all. Just a translation.
So you can't drive on an international driver's license?
Mr. Chairman, the code currently allows you to drive on a foreign country license while you're here temporarily. It certainly aids law enforcement if you have an international license that translates that license should you be stopped. But once you establish residency, you're to get a Virginia license. You don't continue to drive on a foreign country license at that point.
Okay.
And I would also just say that with respect to, I mean, part of the purpose of this bill is to get people paying Virginia taxes and following Virginia rules of the road. And under international license, they wouldn't have to take that test. They wouldn't be paying Virginia taxes, license, insurance premiums, all that other stuff. So it doesn't achieve all those objectives.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Senator Distet.
Mr. Chairman, if I go to Germany, which I have in the past, and I'm living there for 6 months a year, which I have folks who are employed by me that do, they have to have an international driver's license on top of their American driver's license. And what that does is that enables them to purchase cars, get insurance, and drive without having any issues. So if the same reciprocity is with the United States that we provide Germany and Italy and other countries like that, I believe that you can still do that without allowing somebody the ability to vote, which is currently not in the code. And I think you still get the intent of the bill unless I'm missing something. What other coverages are you trying to do? As I understand it, you're trying to allow somebody the ability to vote, allowing somebody the ability to pay taxes, which Germany, they have to go through this to pay taxes. The ability to drive, get insurance, purchase cars, all of those types of things. So is there something else that this allows that I'm missing?
I don't think anybody in this room is suggesting these people ought to be allowed to vote. Okay? And I said it once, I'll say it again. It's not the point. By not doing this and allowing somebody to use an international license, from my calculation, you're leaving somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion of tax revenue on the table that you could otherwise collect if we had people obtain Virginia licenses. You also don't have people trained in Virginia law, Virginia traffic law, Virginia's principles that we expect our drivers to abide by when they go on our highways because they haven't taken the test.
Can you explain to us, Senator Cosford just mentioned to me that there's a delayed enactment on this until July 2017. Why is that delayed enactment?
The DMV told me that they needed time in order to design a credential and get it to the company that manufactures that credential, to get a manufacturing process in place. They didn't think that was something they could implement by July 1 of 2016, so they thought they needed another year to be able to get and also they have to work on their computers some, and they need to hire, they think about, I think it was 80 or 90 new people to deal with the influx of people that are going to come in, because all these people have to go to a DMV facility and go through the process face to face, And that would be a substantial increase in people. I think they said normally they get about 75,000 license applications a year from people turning 16 or whatever, new drivers or people moving in from out of state. And when you have 100,000 new people show up in a year, or 200,000, it would be a significant staffing burden, which again, the fee is designed to take care of. And just to get all that in place, it would take that much time.
All right, I want to hear from administration as to why they support this.
Mr. Holcomb's here, you can come up.
Commissioner, I just want to try to get some clarification as to all the work that went into Real ID and trying to make sure that what we do in Virginia is to ensure that the ones that we're licensing here in this state are actual residents and citizens, and to narrow the scope of who can get a driver's license, why now the administration wants to issue a temporary license for those who are being said that they're here temporary, and Mrs. Grimm said that, you know, on the temporary license that from an international, as long as you're here temporarily, you can operate, but once you establish a residency, that's when the problem comes into existence. And Senator Surovell said this will be from year to year as it's issued. With that being said, if you can explain the administration's position and why now we're deviating from that.
Mr. Chairman, Rick Holton, DMV Commissioner, to try to answer your question. First of all, absolutely, as the gentleman knows, as effective January 1, 2004, everyone who comes in for an original driver's license has to prove legal presence. However, anyone who held a license before January 1, 2004 is not required to come in and prove legal presence. So at this point, you're grandfathered in. So at this point, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you that 60% of our database of 5.4 million people have proven legal presence, 40% have not. Even though I was grandfathered in because I held a license before January 1, the fact that I bought a birth certificate, a Virginia birth certificate from the DMV, I now have proven legal presence. But I will tell you, at this point, not all Virginians who hold a Virginia license have proven legal presence, and that's the way the legislation was drafted.
So you do support this measure?
The administration
has said that this is a bill that they are.
Yes, sir. The administration supports this legislation, and I think the patron covered some of the reasons from a safety standpoint. My colleagues who have implemented this in other locations, California, when they brought in, and they've issued 600,000 of these cards, the failure rate of these customers coming in to take the knowledge test and take the skills test was 80%. Nevada found 90%. So the challenge is that you've got these people who are operating, who are driving cars within those states, who don't know the rules of the road. And as the patron said, New Mexico, Utah saw a dramatic drop in fatalities and crashes as a result of bringing these drivers in, making sure they understand the rules of the road. Certainly, the patron talked about the increased revenue that also will come in. The fact that these customers will now be paying insurance as well as income tax. So for those reasons, the administration supports the legislation.
Sure.
As a former state trooper, California is not a good litmus test. Senator,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Holcomb, the requirement of having an international driver's license and understanding the country you're going into with that license, it does interpret it, but it also says that you are responsible for understanding the rules of the road for the country you're visiting, which is outside of your country of birth. So when I go to England, I have to understand that I'm driving on the other side of the road. When I go to Italy, I have to understand the laws of the road, which are, if there's eye contact and a pedestrian's crossing the road, that they have the right of way. It's those instances and those requirements when you sign your international driver's license. So my question back to the Commissioner and to Senator Surovell is, the international driver's license is an addendum to the license provided by the country of birth. When you sign that, you also state that I will abide by and understand and know the rules of the road in the country I'm driving in. So it sounds like the exact same thing you're trying to do here is the exact same thing, is the exact same purpose of the international driver's license. So please, if I'm missing something, if you can point it to me or tell me what I'm missing.
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStefano, as my deputy explained, you can drive, if you are here temporarily, you can drive on that foreign license, and certainly the international license providing the translation helps law enforcement. But once you establish residency in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you no longer are allowed to use that license. You must get a Virginia driver's license. And I think that's the group of customers that this bill would cover.
Once you are domiciled in this state for 6 months, you're considered a resident.
Have to register your market license.
And at that point, you no longer use the international driver's license.
Thank you, Commissioner. I know you have a lineup behind you to speak to. If we could hear from being brief is smiled upon here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing, which is very, very important for our community. I am the chair of the Virginia Coalition of Latino Organizations and also co-chair of the Try Virginia Forward. Try Virginia Forward was created just last year because we saw the need of our community. It's a huge need, a driver license. And we are working statewide from Roanoke, from Northern Virginia, Virginia Beach, everywhere. Because we believe that our community deserves an opportunity, and also we want to drive safe in this state. I want to ask everybody who supports this bill, you just stand up. Si tú apoyas, por favor, párese. Párese un segundito. Just very brief. Párese si usted apoya. And also, because we are new Americans, Mr. Chairman, we really love this country, and we are here, and we really would like us to treat us as an aspiring Americans and Americans who are making better of this country. And we have delivered today thousands of petitions. We have just 3,000 in the morning. And Father Jack, we have more than 5,000 petitions. And even I have here more that are coming statewide. Please support this bill. This is a bill that really we care, and our community will be very grateful if you do that for us. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Michael Cassidy from the Coleman Institute for Fiscal Analysis. We were asked to take a look at some of the economic dynamics of this issue, and I know you're pressed for time. I'll just raise a couple of points. As Senator Surovell mentioned, the 3 earliest adopting states saw a much more significant drop in traffic fatalities than the nation as a whole. They saw drops that were greater than 30%, whereas the nation as a whole saw drops of 20%. And Mr. Chairman, you said you wanted to get away from the sort of statistics and numbers. The point of it is we have people in our community. They're here. They are working. The point of having access to some kind of driver's authorization card is it can ensure that folks are better connected to our economy, that they're able to drive to school, to go to that parent-teacher meeting. Many of these children are citizens, and their parents are the ones who are undocumented. And if they have a driver's license, they're going to be more likely to go to school, to have that parent-teacher meeting. They're going to be able to get to work consistently, and access to consistent transportation is a huge barrier for a lot of low-wage workers. And so those are the types of economic impacts that having this kind of driver's authorization card would allow to enhance economic growth and family economic security in the region. Thank you.
Michelle Zazier, president of the Virginia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I know that in 2011, many of the terrorists got their license from Virginia. Since that time, Virginia has had some of the most restrictive license requirements. I think it's an opportunity for Virginia to look at what has happened and using that, how we can make this to really give the intention what we try to do by limiting getting their license. having security in the community, safety in the community. That it has done just the opposite. We have a community here that is really limited in what they can do, what they can go shop for, what they can do, take their kids to school, to the doctor, how their lives are. They're so limited. This is an economic benefit and a competitive edge for Virginia compared to other states. This is a great opportunity. I'm prepared, and I have worked with several other business and Chamber of Commerces throughout the Virginia that will come to support this issue because it only makes business sense. I ask you to make Virginia competitive, make Virginia strong, and let's show Virginia an example of what we can do when we work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lana Keith Day Martinez. I'm the Virginia Chapter President of American Families United. We are U.S. citizens whose spouses face significant immigration barriers that are difficult or impossible to overcome. And Mr. Chairman, I'm here to tell you today that you already have a subclass, not just of foreign-born individuals, but of U.S. citizens whose hands are tied along with our spouses as we chauffeur them to and from work every day. You allow my husband to work and to pay taxes in this state for 10 years without giving him eligibility to drive. And the biggest change for us has been since he was able to drive. But I am one of the lucky ones because he had access to the system. When our first son was born, I drove myself to the hospital and a week later resumed chauffeuring my husband. So please support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Simon Sandoval Moschenberg. I'm the legal director of the Immigrant Advocacy Program of the Legal Aid Justice Center, and I'm a constituent of Senator Morrison. I'd like to directly address the legal objections that were raised to this bill. The first objection that was raised is the notion that this would somehow put us out of compliance with the Real ID Act. In fact, Section 202D11 of the Real ID Act specifically contemplates that states can issue these type of non-compliant driver's permits and not thereby taint or sully the compliant driver's licenses that they otherwise issue. I'll also refer you to 6 CFR 37.71A, which specifically contemplates that a state like Virginia can put into place a driver's permit like this without violating the Real ID Act. So as a result, 12 states in the District of Columbia have done it, not have seen negative repercussions. Just last year in 2015, Delaware and Hawaii also were added to the list of states that have driver's permits of this nature. The second objection that was raised was with regards to 24.2-643E, the notion that these are credentials that can be presented at a Virginia polling place. No one would argue that it is sufficient to present a Virginia driver's license to vote in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There are, under present law, there are a great number of people who are presently eligible for a driver's license who are not eligible to vote and do not vote, and we don't have a problem with that. All this is proof of identity. You also have to prove eligibility to vote, essentially. And then finally, the question of the international driver's license. The suggestion has been raised that this is essentially a solution in search of a problem because all these folks can just get international driver's license and there isn't a problem. In practice, I think the commissioner's delegate addressed why that is not the case. But in practice, we can also see we have a room full of people here who are not legally allowed to drive in Virginia, notwithstanding whether or not they have a home country driver's license. So in fact, this is a problem that does need a legislative fix. We can't just rely on the notion that some folks can get an international driver's license. Thank you.
You seem like an intelligent man. Would you not agree that when you talk about needing the legislative fix and hearing the comments from the young lady prior to you, that can's been kicked down the road just north of you a little ways?
I mean, I'm here to address the question that somehow federal law prevents us from doing it, and we've researched this, and our definitive conclusion is that it does not. Federal law specifically contemplates this. We have a problem right here in Virginia that we need to solve, and we're not going to solve that problem by essentially sitting back and waiting for Capitol Hill to solve it. Right? We have a problem right now of every single day folks who are on the road who shouldn't be, or who need to get on the road and don't because they're following the law. So I don't think that we can just sort of point to Washington and say, well, sooner or later they're going to fix this problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave. Senator Pavoni.
I'm sorry, a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Other than California, what other states have these licenses which say non-federal licenses?
Yeah. Senator Surovell.
So Washington, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Connecticut, New Mexico, Illinois, Vermont, Maryland, DC, and it's currently being studied, I know, in Texas, North Carolina, and I believe 3 or 4 other states the commissioner pointed out to me before. It's currently being considered in those states right now, but not enacted yet.
Follow-up question.
Senator Pavoni.
Have those states experienced any negative impacts by issuing these licenses? Have there been?
From a legal point of view, I can tell you that there's been no negative federal repercussions whatsoever. And I think Senator Surovell will say that there's been a positive fiscal.
Right, it's been all positive. The reports that I've read 2 or 3 reports on this, and the commissioner probably knows more than I do, but all the things that I read were all positive. More money, less crashes, less hit and run crashes, more people involved with law enforcement investigations, et cetera.
And there have, last question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pavoni.
Thank you. Senator Surovell, have there been any issues with voting or misuse of the?
I would think that had any issues arisen with people attempting to vote illegally, we would have heard about it through the media because of all the screaming that would have happened, and I haven't heard anything about that. I personally, I follow the media a lot, and I'm not aware of anything.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, I see a line stretching back there.
I know that people, we try to limit it and to not everybody, and have people that have unique things to say, so, and they know to be short.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. I'm Father John Paziano. I minister at Sacred Heart Church and Sacred Heart Center just outside of Richmond. I'm speaking today on behalf of the faith communities in the Commonwealth. Because every weekend we have people coming to worship with us, and in many, many cases, they are being driven by members of their family who do not have driver's licenses. Those drivers, when they drive out of the driveway, they have fear, they are frightened that at any moment, for the least kind of slight traffic violation, they might potentially be in a path to deportation. We are very much in favor of the passage of 930 because it can be a first step in freeing our members from that kind of fear and for also enabling them and their families to sing a new song to the Lord. And I would like to present to you over 5,000 signatures from faith communities of the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Surovell, I'm going to give you 5 more minutes of testimony, and then I'm going to cut it off, and you can raise the hands. I think we know who supports it, and it's not fair to this committee that wants to ask questions.
I agree.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alba Rodriguez. I am a resident of Manassas, Virginia. I am a immigrant from Guatemala. I have called Virginia home more than 20 years. I am a member of New Virginia Majority. I am here today to ask you to vote yes on SB 390. A driver's license is necessary for all who live here in Virginia. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and the impact that this had on my family cannot be understated. I could not transport myself to my doctor appointments in Charlottesville because I could not apply for a driver's license. My husband, as a result, had to choose between his job or taking me to cancer clinic. Being diagnosed with cancer was difficult for my family, but it was made much worse by the fact I couldn't drive. Today I'm here, I'm getting better. As a mother, I would like to take my kids to soccer practice, to school, to church. I would like to get a job to help my family to get a better quality of life. So I ask you to vote yes on SB 390 for me and the many other families that are in Virginia trying to build a better life. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman Carrico and members of the Senate Transportation Committee. My name is Pieter Samberman. I am the Vice Chair of the Virginia Coalition of Latino Organizations and a leader in the Hampton Roads community, in which I have worked with the state, local police departments for over 15 years. And I am here to urge you to vote and pass Senate Bill 390. And this is a couple of reasons. This bill strengthens our national security and supports the work of our law enforcement community. Immigrants should be documented, and if they're driving, they should, like everybody else here, pass the road test and all the safety measures. No longer, ladies and gentlemen, is it believable that withholding driver's licenses from immigrants is beneficial to anyone in any way. Support the work of our law enforcement officers and our courts by making sure everyone that comes in contact with them is able to provide their real identity and address. This law, as you have heard, is not an experiment. It has passed in more than 10 states, and it's a law that works. And let me tell you, when I have meetings with the local police departments, I can tell you that hundreds of people come to them because they want that relationship. As you were talking regarding international driver licenses, in Virginia, actually, there are little stores, some places, that actually sell documents to immigrants for over $100 that actually provide them with a so-called international driver's license. I think it is behooves our country, really, and the state as Virginia, to make sure that not only revenues are raised and benefit our state, but that actually we can, in fact, provide law-abiding people with a way to drive. And furthermore, the licenses will not allow them to be specific enough to make sure that nobody's able to use those licenses for any other reason. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna wrap it up, at least for the, I don't know if there's anybody to speak against, but two things I want to point out. Number one is that Delegate Bloxham has similar legislation on the House side. I don't believe it's been considered yet, but his legislation is a little bit different from mine. It has an insurance requirement in it that probably needs to be adjusted. But the other thing I want to say is that Mr. Holcomb handed me a provision, or two sentences I want to read you out of I believe it's the Commissioner's study that was done by the organization, professional organization, which he's a member. It says, other states, including Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Carolina, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, and Texas, are considering legislation relating to driver privilege cards in upcoming sessions. And I would just note that many of those legislatures are Republican controlled, for whatever that's worth. Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Carolina, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Texas all are. And then it says, in North Carolina, the bill is sponsored by a Republican representative who stated the goal of the legislation is to, quote, separate those who are engaged in criminal activity from those who are otherwise not engaged in unlawful activity, close quote. That's why they're doing it. And Mr. Chairman, I think it's a good bill. Again, I think it'll generate all kinds of benefits for this state, and I think it's the direction we need to go in. I would hope the committee would act favorably on it.
Thank you. Before I ask questions of the committee, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition? We've heard a lot of testimony in favor, and I hate to cut people off, but we only have a certain amount of time here, but I want to hear any opposition if you're here to speak in opposition. All right, that being said, is there any more questions from anyone here on the dais that they have of the patron? All right, hearing none. Senator Favola?
I move to report the bill.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 390.
Mr. Chairman, I'd have
Senator Garrett?
I'd have an alternate motion, but I'd like to speak to the bill if I might.
Senator Garrett?
I'm not going to point fingers, but I heard a couple of people refer to folks in this room as these people. It's offensive to me. They're not these people, these are people. Right? These are people. And don't go out too soon. it's been said repeatedly, and I want to echo it, there's a problem. The ironic question that kept pinging my head while Senator Surovell was articulately speaking the need for this legislation was how far you live from the Capitol in DC versus how far you live from the Capitol in Virginia. Because my assertion would be that the problem lies in Washington, DC. If I had a dearth of opportunity and I wanted to provide for myself and my family, and there was a place where there was greater opportunity for myself and my family, and that place did nothing to enforce its own laws, I'd go there. I'd go there. And that's the circumstance. It troubles me that the current administration, through administrative act, attempted this summer to remove the block from the Virginia voter registration form where you would check, I hereby swear or affirm I'm a citizen. And there's no mention of 24.2 in this bill, because I can assure you that the IDs issued, temporary or not, would qualify under 24.2 in the current Virginia law, y'all pardon me. And so I wonder if that was accidental. I want to be clear. Nobody in this room deserves anybody's blame or condemnation. But there are a whole bunch of people, 535 plus one to be exact, in Washington, D.C. who do. And so we have two choices. We can seek to act and fill a federal vacuum and subvert existing federal law, or we can put our feet down, point to the ideas of federalism that this nation was established upon, and demand that those people, in Washington, D.C., do something about the reality that fills this room. But right now, I think this is a cart before horse maneuver. Yeah, there's a problem. Hundreds of thousands of people who are real, living, breathing people. But the real problem stems from the fact that the women and men in Washington, D.C. won't enforce the laws that are on the books. And we ought to be demanding that, not this. That's why my alternate motion would be to PBI the bill.
All right, there's a substitute motion to PBI. Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded to PBI the bill. So, the alternate motion, PBI, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No. Proxies are no.
Proxies?
Proxy for Marsden, no. Proxy for Deeds, no.
Edwards.
All right, I'm gonna have the clerk call the roll.
Senator Deeds by proxy?
No.
Senator Marsden by proxy?
No.
Senator Fabolo?
No.
Senator Alexander?
No.
Senator Edwards by proxy?
No.
Senator Wexton?
No.
Senator Newman? Senator Cosgrove? Senator Garrett?
Aye.
Senator Distaff? Senator Chase?
Aye.
Senator Sudoline?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
7-6.
Bill's PBI 7-6. Let me say thank you to all of you that took the time to make the trip and explain to us your circumstances. We do understand it's just a matter of where the policies will go in Virginia, and I think we have a wide array of problems that needs to be addressed on another end north of us.
Mr. Chairman,
Bill's been PBI.
I just had
You might want to explain to them what TBI means. I'm not sure.
The bill has been passed by indefinitely, meaning the bill is dead.